Welcome back to the Mountain View Post Radio Hour, the radio show all about Mountain View, the neighborhood. My name is Kirsten Swan, and I'm your host, and we have a guest with us right now. Before we get to her, though, I just wanted to say thank you to KONR Out North Radio 1061. This is a completely volunteer-led radio station, and we rely on donations and support from the community. So if you want to head to outnorthradio.com, and you're interested in supporting the station, then there is an option to do that on the website, and that's outnorthradio.com. Okay, so in the studio with me today, I have Victoria Petersen. She is a local journalist and a student at UAA. And hi, Victoria. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So you are a copy editor at the Northern Light newspaper, and you work for Alaska Public Radio? Or
I'm an intern, yeah.
You're an intern there, and you were an intern, I believe, at ADN before that. Mm-hmm. And you've done a lot of writing about Anchorage and Anchorage communities. And so she, in the last issue of Mountain View Post magazine, has an article about the history of Mountain View, and she spoke with a lot of people who lived in the neighborhood for a pretty long time and dug up, a bunch of kind of cool tidbits about the neighborhood and what it used to be like and how much it's changed. Her story is called Neighborhood Roots, A Short History of Mountain View, and you can find it in the winter issue of Mountain View Post magazine at the Mountain View Neighborhood Library, and also online at mountainviewpost.com, and also at local businesses. So Victoria, tell me a little bit about the story. You spoke with so many people for it, who lots of them like really long-time neighbors. Tell me about the process of like getting those interviews. Where did you meet people? How did you put it all together?
Yeah, so I had one source that I originally reached out to because I knew that she had been living in Mountain View for a long time, and I thought that if I reached out to her, she could point me in the direction of other people who had been living in Mountain View for a long time. But as it turns out, she was on vacation in Europe when I needed her to get back to me. So I ended up going on Facebook to that Facebook page, you grew up in Anchorage if ... And I just put like a little, is there anyone who grew up in Mountain View that could tell me about like the history and like what their experience was like growing up there? And I was like overwhelmed with the response. Usually with that page, you always get more than you bargain for. But
how many people did you hear from?
Did I hear from? Probably like 45 or so, like legitimate responses. And then out of that, I probably talked to like 15 people total, and then used what I used in the story. But
that's cool.
Yeah, some people just sent me long emails about their like childhood. They didn't live in Anchorage anymore. They just talked about the streets they grew up on, the kids they hung out with. Some people called me. Yeah,
it's amazing how people still have those memories for so long after. And so some people called you.
Yeah, some people called me. This lady called me who she had bought the house she grew up in Mountain View and still lives here. And she was on vacation at the time, but she really wanted to like share her story with me, so that was cool. But yeah, I reached out to a lot of people, learned a lot about the neighborhood, like the pig farm and the lions and Mountain View. I found out had a very rich history.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy when you look back at some of those things, and to drive through today, you would never necessarily realize that there was a working pig farm in the neighborhood, or yes, there were lions on the street. That type of thing. And it's also amazing, I think, kind of the power of how you're able to connect with so many people now, so many years later, maybe on that group. That is a pretty cool historical reference.
I know. I have some friends that are like deleting Facebook for, like a social media cleanse or whatever, but it's like I literally couldn't do it because like I use it so much for work and so much for writing.
Right. But, and Mountain View too seems to be like a pretty transient neighborhood, so people come and they go, and so you might not be able to find people who live there for a long time otherwise. But that's neat that you're able to connect with so many people.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that stood out to you the most in your interviews with all of these former residents and in your connections with them?
I had a few people, talk about their growing up in Mountain View and then talk about their time coming back to Mountain View after leaving for so long, and they were, pretty like disappointed or, even disgusted with just like how it turned out. Mm-hmm. And then, but that wasn't the majority, that was a minority. Majority of people were just like their memories of Mountain View are so fond, and their memories of Mountain View today are so fond, and so I thought that was really cool.
It is striking to me sometimes the differences in in thought between people maybe who've lived in the neighborhood for a long time and who lived there 50 years ago and spent, decades living there, and people in other parts of Anchorage. You definitely have a different perspective when you've put in that much time there. What was your favorite anecdote or kind of the favorite thing you picked up during those interviews?
I think the lady that called me, that she told me that she'd bought her mom's house because she didn't want to leave Mountain View, and she had so many amazing memories growing up there. I think that was a really nice story.
That is pretty cool. For a future story, there's a family in the neighborhood. I hear a couple who's lived there for over 50 years and makes a mean apple cider out of crab apples that grows in their yard. So I have it on my list, to find them, and I don't know, maybe they'd be on to share their recipe. What was the most surprising part for you about these interviews and talking to people? Did you learn anything or find yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the pig farm and the lions, the subheading for that part of the article was "From Pigs to Lions, Mountain View was a wild place." I knew about the lions and I thought that was weird. And then interviewing people, they're like, "Yeah, it was pretty weird." And then the pig farm was cool too, because I just had no idea about that. I learned about that while writing this article.
One of my neighbors who lives a few blocks away from me on the same street, he's lived in the neighborhood since the 40s and built a lot of the original houses on my street. And I had the opportunity to interview him once, and he had kind of some of those same memories of the neighborhood when it was more, not homesteads, but more people coming to help do work on Jay Bear, or, it was the 40s. Anchorage was much different. And then, there are other things throughout the neighborhood too. Did you know the Museum of Science and Nature? It used to be a boat warehouse. I think it was the Midnight Sun Boat Company.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, back in the day. And then it's interesting too, the things that change really quickly, even since I've moved there a few years ago. Brewster's, that store that was there. You might have spoken with some people
Definitely, yeah.
who used to maybe get their jeans at Brewster's or...
Actually, one of the most interesting things I learned about while talking to people was how many stores and how set up Mountain View was compared to downtown Anchorage, and how people would go to Mountain View to go shopping, and they go to Mountain View to do what they did in the 30s and 40s.
Right. And now these days, we have a new mall, and it's really cool, and we have new stores coming in, and it's really exciting because we haven't had these stores before. But also, you forget that this was kind of a it's
happening.
Yeah, it's been kind of a commercial space for a really long time now. Well, cool. That's more about Victoria Petersen's story about the history of Mountain View. It's called Neighborhood Roots. You can find it in the winter issue of Mountain View Post magazine. That's available at the Mountain View Neighborhood Library. Also, little free libraries around the neighborhood. So, if you know where they are, that's cool. If you don't, you might have to do some driving and look for them. And also a few businesses around the neighborhood. Or you can read it online too. And when we come back, we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, we will talk with her about what she does in Spenard and a project that she's working on. Victoria, take it away. Tell us about it.
So I'm working on the Spenardian, which is a hyperlocal magazine, just like the Mountain View Post, but instead for the Spenard neighborhood in Anchorage. I guess you could say I'm a fourth-generation Spenardian. My great-grandparents homesteaded over on the west side of Spenard.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And,
wow. So over...
Behind Bosco's area.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess that's
Are there
northwest.
Still parts of their homestead there?
Oh, yeah. It's still there. I live right behind it with my grandma. And
holy smokes. Okay. Okay,
yeah.
So deep roots in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so it means a lot to me. My parents met at Coots. Spenard runs deep. And
I feel like that's a story you need to write.
Yeah.
So the Spenardian, it's been a website now for how long?
A year. So it was my capstone project last spring semester, and I debuted the website with 15 stories, some photo stories along with that.
And the types of things people can find on it, it really varies, right?
It's pretty all over the place. We just started a community cookbook thing, so that's going to be something that's going to come soon, so stay tuned.
Tasty.
And we do our Windows of Spenard segment, where we just take pictures of windows around the neighborhood to kind of give a sense of how many different kinds of structures are in Spenard, because Spenard's one of those neighborhoods where you have commercial, retail, and residential all in one block of each other.
Neat.
So that was kind of like our artistic photo way of showing that.
That seems like something that's been really popular with residents so far and people in the neighborhood, because you can really connect with like, oh, I recognize that quirky, that's in my neighbor's garage and I walk by it in the alley every day, and it's
for sure. And so we have some news stories, we have some feature stories, artsy stories, just sort of events that we'll cover. But right now we're working on, me and my partner Sam are working on creating a magazine just like the Mountain View Post.
Hey, and you had a pretty awesome event on Thursday night this week. I was able to make it just for a little bit, but it was poppin', and there were a ton of people there, and it was a fundraiser for the event, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we decided to start a fundraiser to create some funds to print our first issue, because usually it's pretty hard to do advertising if you don't have an example of what you're producing. So we're both in college, so we needed to kind of make some money to start this magazine. We had an event at Church of Love, which is like a Spenard institution now, and
that's it's owned by Cook Inlet Housing Authority, correct? And they're using it as a kind of arts and community space.
Community space, yeah.
For now, okay, very neat. And so you had a fundraiser, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and you had a lot of local businesses involved.
Yeah, we had the silent auction with lots of products donated by friends and local businesses. And then we had lots of free food get donated to us, and then beer garden, coffee, and then and then we had live music as well.
Live music, that was the part I missed. So who was it? You had a few like pretty recognizable local bands there playing.
We had 2 Spenardian bands. So we had Shane Russell Family Band, and then we had Medium Build, Nick Carpenter, who works at Beartooth.
Awesome. And you had a silent auction going on, and you had donations from a ton of local businesses.
Yeah, I was overwhelmed with the amount of local support we got with that. Lots of people wanted to donate. After we posted our event, we had people reach out to us, wanting to donate to us. Writer's Block, one of the most interesting donations we got was Writer's Block donated a part of the wall of the old adults only XXX shop.
So a little background on that for people who aren't familiar with the Writer's Block. It used to be an adults only video store in Spenard, and had a pretty iconic sign that just said basically just that, adults only. Is there a XXX on there?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that was part of the old building, and now of course it's a pretty rad local bookstore that publishes Alaskan works, and you should definitely all check it out. Anyway, so the old sign from the old building.
Yeah, so they actually donated part of the wall of because they demoed the whole building, and so they kept some pieces of the wall. And over the course of 3 weeks before they demoed it, they let artists kind of do whatever they wanted to the exterior. So it was, painted on, had like lots of
cool,
art on this particular piece of wall. And so they gave us that, and we auctioned that off for $235.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really nice. And so now you're working to put together this magazine, and it's looking like it's going to be coming out in April.
Yeah.
And people can find out more on your website.
Yes.
Which is thespenardian.com. Can you give us kind of any previews about what people might find in this first issue, what you're hoping to include?
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be a Faces of Spenard, which is our profile section. On just neighbors and people who live and work in the area. There's going to be a Windows of Spenard, of course, and we're also going to debut the community cookbook section. But there's going to be lots of stories. It's going to be roughly 50 pages or so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, very exciting. Everybody check out thespenardian.com and stay tuned for keep an eye out for the first print issue when it comes out. And thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much for coming down here today in the Iditarod, and go enjoy the races now.
Thanks.
Welcome back to the Mountain View Post Radio Hour, the radio show all about Mountain View, the neighborhood. My name is Kirsten, and I'm your host. Thank you to KONR for hosting us here today. I have another guest co-host in the studio with me right now. And before I introduce her, I wanted to talk a little bit about a program that kicked off last week. And you might have read about it in the last issue of Mountain View Post magazine or heard about it somewhere else, but it's called Set Up Shop, and it's an entrepreneur training program organized by the Anchorage Community Land Trust. They have weekly classes on Tuesdays, and they have a beginning cohort of entrepreneurs who are putting together businesses or growing their existing businesses. And this program is actually taught by a Mountain View resident, Jasmine Smith, who's the owner of a business consulting and training group. It's called the Business Boutique. And so that's set up shop. It started on February 27th, and I believe they have graduation in May. And so we'll definitely be talking about that more here over the coming weeks. And we'll actually have Jasmine here in the studio next week to talk about business training and entrepreneurship and that type of thing. But we have someone else here in the studio today also to talk about entrepreneurship because she is also a local business owner. My co-host, Kate. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, Kate, you are a student at Clark Middle School. You're in 7th grade, and you've lived in Mountain View what I thought was your whole life, but now I'm learning there was actually a year where you didn't live in Mountain View. So,
Yeah.
but basically a lifelong Mountain View resident. And last year, you were in the first issue of Mountain View Post magazine because you were doing something pretty cool, and you had a booth at the farmers market, and you were running your own business that did many things. And when I interviewed you about that, you had a ton of ideas for other businesses too. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your business, and because I know you have one. Tell me about it.
My business, it started as something with me and my sister and my brother. We did the lemonade stand at the Mountain View Street Fair.
Was that part of Lemonade Day? Or
Yeah, it was.
Okay, and Lemonade Day is kind of an entrepreneurship training program for kids, right? Where you have lemonade stands and learn how to run a business. So you were doing that, but you were doing it with your brothers and sisters. And what happened? How did it grow from Lemonade Day to?
Well, I started out volunteering at the Mountain View Farmers Market, and I guess I just kind of had the idea that I wanted to continue the lemonade business.
Okay.
And so I asked them if I could start a program for kids. So if they wanted to have their booth there, they could do it for free. And I was kind of like, well, I could help advertise that as well.
And here you are. So I think you're holding up your end of the deal. You're talking about it. You're doing some advertising. What was the argument that you made when you went and you asked them for some free space? Why is it important? Why did you?
I thought it was important because if kids learn now that they can run their own business, if they want to in the future, they can do it. If they learn it earlier in life, they can do it in the future.
So it's like a training thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and it seems like that was successful.
Yes.
And so you were the first kind of youth business owner to do that at the farmers market. And tell me about your business. What was going on at your booth? You had a lot of things happening there.
At my booth, I had lemonade. I had different probably another kind of lemonade, but it kind of changed every week. One time I did rhubarb, one time I did blueberry, one time I did strawberry, one time I did strawberry rhubarb.
So yeah, this is not just any normal lemonade stand. This is...
And the rhubarb was grown.
Locally?
Locally, yeah. It was from our garden, and then it was from my best friend's garden.
Whoa. Okay, so you were like out there picking rhubarb yourself and to do. Very cool. And how did the business turn out for you? Because you were there every week and you were talking to people and...
I think I got over $300.
Wow, that's a lot of lemonade.
Yeah.
And so you had a lot of customers?
Yeah, it was 50 cents a cup. I also sold rocks. Popcorn at some point. I also sold pickles on a stick.
Pickles on a stick?
Yes, they were really good.
That's okay. Well, I'm not a pickle person myself, but...
I also sold popsicles at some point. I also sold popsicles that were pickle popsicles.
A pickle popsicle on a stick?
It's called a pickle-sicle.
A pickle-sicle. Do you know, this makes me wish I was a pickle person because... on a stick seems like the way to go. You could eat it. It'd be kind of like a corn dog, but a vegetable.
And it's easier to eat, so you don't have all the juice on your hand.
Are pickles really that juicy? I wouldn't know.
Okay. It's cucumbers. And
And those are like 99% water anyway. So
I water mine down when I do the pickle sickle, so it's not as strong.
Okay. I can see with all that water content though. I can see why it would make a great pickle sickle. So you had this whole variety of things. You had pickle sickles and rocks and lemonade, a million varieties of lemonade.
Pretty sure everybody at the farmers market has bought something from me at some point.
So you were doing some networking at the farmers market as well. What was the most challenging part of running this business at the farmers market? Were there any like unexpected roadblocks that you ran into, or?
Well, it was kind of hard trying to get there because, you know, I have a bunch of stuff and I can't walk.
Right.
Because that's a lot of stuff to hold.
Right.
So
right.
they gave me a ride there.
Okay, so you're able to arrange transportation, but that's something you need to think about as a business person. How am I going to carry all of this stuff to market? But you overcame that hurdle, right?
Yeah.
What was your favorite part at the end of the summer? What got you excited to go and run your business every week? And
I guess seeing everybody, because when I see them, it just makes me smile because everybody's like, yes, lemonade.
Yeah, you have something that people are excited about, and
Yeah.
it is really nice when you come into the farmer's market and you see there's some place you can go and quench your thirst.
And since probably everybody there at least has seen my face or knows my face.
Right. Because when you work together, you start to know people. And how many businesses would you say are at the Mountain View Farmers Market? Probably about.
It changes.
Okay, but a range. It seems maybe like half a dozen to a dozen, or.
I think it's because there's like they wanted it to be like a U, the shape of a U, which is really cool because then sometimes they have the booth where they do the music. And they have live music sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And sometimes, a lot of times, it seems like the live music it comes from people who live in the neighborhood, and so you can see your neighbors and think, oh, Jed, I didn't know you sang. Wow. So what advice would you give to other kids who maybe wanted to start a business? Because like you pointed out earlier, if you start early, you learn a lot, and by the time you're older, you're basically an experienced businesswoman.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to maybe your friends at school or other kids who had a good idea?
Just go for it. You never know until you try. And if it fails, then you'll have something to redeem from.
Mm-hmm. You'll have learned something, right? And you'll be able to apply that
in the future.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any ideas for future businesses, speaking of in the future?
Of mine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't need to give away all your secret ideas, but is there anything you can tell us about?
Well, I'm starting to make jewelry more than I had before.
Okay.
I've recently made a couple bracelets and a necklace from a kit I got from Christmas.
So that's going to turn into part of your business as well?
We'll see how it goes.
Okay, maybe do some like trial runs at the farmer's market or something.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk all about the farmer's market, because even though it's still February...
It's still coming up.
But oh my gosh, it's March now. So yeah, it is coming up.
3 months
Quickly.
until school's over.
Okay, quick break, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Mountain View Post Radio Hour. Thank you for joining us and tuning in today. My name is Kirsten Swan, and I'm your host, and I am here with my co-host, Kate Davis.
Hello.
Hello. And we are down here in the KONR studio right on 4th Avenue watching the Iditarod start.
Yeah.
Literally, it's pretty cool. We just heard the anthem. The start is right out in front of us. You can,
see it from here.
Yeah. So while we're here talking about the KONR studio, I just wanted to say thank you to the organization for hosting the Mountain View Post Radio Hour. And for those of you listening, if you're interested in learning more about Out North Radio or learning about ways to support it, you can visit them online at outnorthradio.com and find out how to support the organization and ways that you can donate, or maybe you're interested in volunteering to host a show or something like that. So, Kate, we were just talking in the last segment about your business and the lemonade stand and the farmer's market where you were running your lemonade stand last summer. And the Mountain View Farmer's Market, even though it's not going on right now, it starts in late spring, early summer, but there's a ton going on there, right? And so if people haven't heard about it or they haven't stopped by, they might want to check it out.
Yeah, it's really fun there.
But you, as a vendor, you're there every week, and so you see everything that happens firsthand and know all about it.
And sometimes I don't go there just as a vendor. Usually I go there as a volunteer as well as a vendor.
So you stay involved in lots of ways. How do you volunteer? What do you do with
Well,
that?
I help them set up the tables for everybody. I help them set up the tents.
Mm-hmm.
I help booths set up their booths. I help them set up their tables and put the stuff on their tables.
That's a lot of work. Why is this so important to you?
It's really fun.
Really?
It gives me something to do and keep my mind busy.
Especially
And-
in the summer, I guess.
Yeah.
It could be really fun.
I could just be sitting at home watching TV, but that's more fun.
Oh, exactly, especially in the summer. I
Yes.
bet your mom's glad to hear that. So besides just, say, vegetables or, delicious ribs at the farmer's market, there are a lot of other things going on. It's not just food, right?
Yeah.
You can tell us about some of the other things.
Well, at one point there was a booth selling like African treasures from Africa. There is the national parks who come over there sometimes and do crafts. There is the
Once I was driving home from work and I saw a bike there with like a huge, it wasn't just a normal bike.
No.
And I didn't have time to stop and turn around and see what was going on, but I understand that you know the rest of the story. So tell me about
Yeah.
this bike.
So the Lucas Sack Library and the Mountain View Library share a book bike, and it's a bike, but on the end of it has a giant case with wheels, and then you can open it up, and there has a little table on the bottom and a bunch of books, and they just drive it over from the library.
And so it's kind of like a mobile library, and people can check it out, and it's a way to check out a book at the farmer's market.
No, they give out
Or-
books for free.
Oh, so you don't need to have a library card.
No, not
It's-
there when they give you books. One time they did like a bookmark decorating thing. It wasn't a contest, but you could decorate your own bookmark there. It was really cool.
That is really cool. I think it's really neat that there are so many opportunities to check out books, not just at the library. Like in Mountain View, we have all those little free libraries, right?
Yeah, and so it's a take a book, you leave a book.
Right. And in some of them, you can find a magazine, so you might be able to find something that Kate writes, because we're getting ready to publish the spring issue of Mountain View Post, and that'll be in April. And we had a meeting about it yesterday.
And some great ideas.
So many
Kate.
great ideas. Yes, Kate has a lot of things that she's working on, and her sister as well. And we're still looking for contributors. So if you live in the neighborhood and you're a Mountain View resident, or you used to live there, or you want to participate somehow, and you like taking pictures or writing or drawing or doing anything like that, you can visit our website, which is mountainviewpost.com, mtviewpost.com, and just send us a note. And we definitely want as many people to be involved as possible, because the more the merrier, right?
Yes.
Right. So back to the farmer's market. Some of the things that are going on, you were talking about, they had a raffle last year. And
Yes, at the last Mountain View Farmers Market last year, the booth that's going to have the garden, they did a raffle, and they said $2 a ticket, and I went around because I heard about that, and they had just one thing to give away, but I wanted to go beyond that. I asked every booth if they would be okay to give one thing to the raffle, because everybody likes their booth. They come every time.
And you know everybody at all the booths because
Yes.
you've talked to them all and helped set up and all of that.
They last year they did because they had a bunch of stuff left in their garden. So I gave them the idea to do the You Pick garden, and they made a lot of money off of that.
That's very cool. So the raffle, but the raffle or the project that you're talking about, the garden project, this is the project of Catholic Social Services, the RAISE program, correct?
Yes.
The refugee and immigration, or Refugee and Immigrant Assistance Services, I believe, is the acronym. And they work with newcomers to Anchorage and help them get settled and do a lot of amazing work. And they run the Grow Fresh, or the Fresh International Gardens.
One time
McPhee,
they
right?
sold this really good chocolate zucchini bread. It was really good.
Chocolate zucchini bread.
It was really good.
Was it like all chocolate or just chocolate chips in the zucchini bread?
It was just like chocolate flavored with zucchini
Oh,
in it.
okay, that's a new
I
level.
kept going back and asking, do you have some more? They're like, no.
Well, I guess you can only go back and ask for more so many times until it runs out, right?
Yeah.
At least they know it's popular, so hopefully they bring more this year.
Yeah.
But this year, right, they're expanding, and they're going to have, maybe this means more zucchini bread, because there's going to be
Yay.
more room for zucchini.
Yeah.
This could be good news for all of us. But yes, they're putting in the new garden. I believe it's 27,000 square feet, I believe, is the space.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on this, but they're putting in, it's definitely the largest, community garden in Mountain View. It's going to be run by the farmers, by the raised farmers, and also, I believe, graduates of their gardening program. And they're going to be producing things for the farmers market, right?
I think so, yeah. I think it's going to be really cool because that space is just vacant.
Right.
But so now it has a purpose.
Mm-hmm. And they started last year. There have been a lot of changes. For those of you who might not live in the neighborhood, the space we're talking about, it's the former John's RV Park space. It's right there next to the Shell station on Mountain View Drive, and it's the location of the farmers market every summer. And now it's going to be, there's going to be more stuff going on.
If you pass by it now, you could see a bright red shed that they built last year that has tables. Sometimes they have candy in there just so they can fill up a bucket for when they win the game.
Okay, don't tell people there's candy in the shed, Kate. I'm heading to the shed after the show. Just kidding. So they store all the stuff in there for the farmers market so that they can bring it out and just easy access.
Yes.
Because like you were telling us earlier, you live in the neighborhood, but when you set up your booth, you have to haul everything from your house, and it's a lot of stuff. So it's
Yes.
yeah, it's great. You don't have to bring a table.
It's very helpful.
And so this year, there's going to be the farmers market again, and then they're going to be working on putting in that garden.
Yeah.
So you're a seventh grader, and you've lived in the neighborhood basically your whole life. And there are a lot of changes. We talked about like in the beginning of the show before you came on some of the history of the neighborhood, and now we're talking about changes with the garden and the farmers market.
Another change is the Mountain View School.
The Mountain View, the elementary school?
Yes.
Oh, because you are
I went
a graduate
there for
of
3 years.
the Mountain View Elementary School. What changes there? They did some construction recently, right?
Yeah, it looks very different. If you pass by it, if you look up a picture of it, it's way different.
Mm-hmm.
It's gray and dark blue.
And they changed the roof, so it's kind of
It's really cool because it's kind of like a very spread out V on the top of the building.
What do you think, as someone who grew up here in the neighborhood and you've seen all these changes, you probably remember like when the Brewster's building was there, right?
Yeah.
And then it got torn down and now it's empty, and you remember when the red shed wasn't there and now it is there.
I was like, what?
What do you think has been the impact of these changes on the neighborhood, just in your experiences?
It made our community more together because it had more updated things that we can be together to do. The farmers market made it easier for us to meet up with other people throughout the community and see what they sell and be inspired by that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad I have you here today. Actually, I just thought of this. Speaking of inspiring people and bringing people together and everything, at last month's community council meeting, or it might have been 2 months ago, we heard that we're not doing a Mountain View street fair this year, and it's not being organized again just because it was a lot of work and organized by volunteers, and so it's not happening this year. And so there's kind of a void where that used to be. We're gonna have our refugee day celebration as usual, and we'll have other things happening in the neighborhood, but not the street fair. So
I didn't hear about that.
I know. Well, it hasn't really been spread yet. I guess we should put it on the website, right?
Yeah.
Just so people know about it. But what suggestions do you have? If you could think of any idea, something to like take its place, or a way for people to come together in the summer, or just something that would be cool to have in the neighborhood.
It'd be cool if we could have a bunch of people like donate some food and like have a party just for the community. Not like the street fair, very huge, but like maybe a tiny little party for people who...
Kind of like a potluck type deal?
Yeah.
That would be fun. We could do it in the park, maybe.
Yeah.
There are a lot of picnic tables at Davis Park.
That'd be really fun.
That would be really fun. What about, speaking of summer break, though, do you have spring break coming up?
Yeah, in 1 week.
Oh my gosh. I wish I had a spring break.
1 week from now, I'll be in spring break.
So what's going on in the neighborhood for spring break? Anything neat going on? What are neighborhood kids doing for spring break?
I don't really know. I think they might be going to the library, probably going to the mall.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, if there's still Ferrandiing. I don't know when that ends.
I think it might end this weekend, actually. It's been going on for a week already. What are your spring break plans? library?
I can't walk there.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess.
I think so, maybe, though.
Mm-hmm.
Probably find a way.
And there's a lot going on at the library these days, right?
Yeah. They have some new staff. They have some staff leave.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably going to have some new stuff going on. Virginia left, so there's a new person now.
Mm-hmm.
I actually knew him. He was the librarian at ANCCS, the Anchorage Charter School.
Oh,
Anchorage.
Okay,
Yeah.
right across the street. And you used to be in the dance group there.
Yeah, I went to school there too.
What a small world.
Yes.
Very cool. Do you know, I heard from him, he reported, and that he's the manager at the library there, David. He reported at the last community council meeting that foot traffic through the library has been up over 40% over the last year. And also, I think reference desk requests had been up by over 40%. So we have a ton of people going to the library.
Maybe it's because they heard about it on the magazine. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, Kate, it is about 10 o'clock now, and so that is, I think we're about at the end of our show here. Did we miss anything? Did I miss any big news or anything that we were going to talk about today?
No.
Well, thank you so much for coming down here. I love chatting with you about neighborhood news. Hopefully we will be able to talk with you again next week.
Yeah.
And you're listening to the Mountain View Post Radio Hour on KONR-LP 106.1 in Anchorage. Join us next week at 9 a.m. And happy Iditarod Day. Thanks for listening, everyone.